Hello, my name is Dr. Vladimir Schnitzel, and we're here in the wonderful woods of eastern Pennsylvania to explore the life and the tragic end of Christopher McCandless. The Transcendentalists believe that through isolation in nature, they could kind of interact with the most unfiltered connection to the grand spiritual essence, God, however you want to define it, a powerful spiritual body, and this connection was most pure and uninhibited through nature. Now, Chris McCandless, a student of these men's writings and beliefs and doctrines, sought to find himself in nature and have a sort of spiritual realization. He was discontent with who he was because he did not know who he was.
Endless round, it's the circle of life, and it moves us all through despair and hope.
Transcendentalism. The writings of Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau obviously were nature-focused. They revered nature as the most pure connection to the great, grand spiritual essence, God, heaven, whatever you like to call it. Their doctrines also focused on removing oneself from society, and in turn this translated to leaving modern life. For McCandless, it wasn't just society he was leaving. Though he did by going to Alaska, he left modern society, obviously. But for McCandless, it was leaving the life he had at home. It was leaving his life behind. It's seen through his travels that he associated himself with the common blue-collar man. His father was not. The life he lived was not that of a common blue-collar man. McCandless attended a prestigious university, came from a wealthy family, lived in a nice suburb. Both Thoreau and McCandless shared the belief that in order to find their true selves, they had to isolate themselves from the rest of the world. And that's why they kind of delved into the wilderness and literally threw away the lives they had. Obviously, McCandless to a much more extreme extent, but nonetheless, the same doctrine is followed. Christopher McCandless, or Alexander Supertramp, was remarkably talented, bright, intuitive. He, by all definitions, was an astounding young man. But on his journey, many remarked that he was arrogant, stubborn, conceited, and condescending. And this is no question. It's not even subject to reason. This was Chris's downfall, his inability to respect or acknowledge that there were powers that existed that were greater than his, that he could not control. Being out here in the woods, it's just invigorating. I understand what McCandless and the Transcendentalists were speaking about when they talk about the kind of awe-inspiring power of nature. It's unbelievable. It's a visceral experience. I feel as though I'm more in tune with the functions of the world, not just of this timeline, but timelines past, present, and future, as if the chorus of the souls of millions of men and spirits and animals are kind of calling to me. It's hard to explain, but nature. He was born Christopher McCandless, but he created Alexander Supertramp. Alexander left Georgia and made his way up the streams of Mexico through the western United States to the Dakotas and then to Alaska. But it was the brutality of the wilderness, the Mother Nature that he did not respect, that brought back Christopher McCandless. Weeks of starvation due to the possible consumption of potato seed brought Christopher to the terrifying realization that his fatality was indeed a reality, something many suspect that he himself had denied for many years. His air, his condescendingness. The reasons behind this journey was not superficial, although you can relate it back to his father. It is not the most obvious route. It is not just to show his father what he can do. It's much deeper than that. Through Chris's kind of, not necessarily traumatic childhood, but his traumatic revelation as to his childhood, probably further emphasized the already deep-lying problems Chris had with his identity. To learn that his early childhood was very much a facade on his father's part shook him to the core, and that kind of sent him down on this spiraling path that left him dead in a van in Alaska, about 10 miles.
Here, I have time for reflection. Time to figure out who I really am. I'm searching for myself. I think I'll find my own identity, not someone else's.
Christopher McCandless designed his newfound self, the adventurer, of a series of novels by the author Jack London. London's novels embodied this super manly, masculine, wilderness adept, innovative character. This inspired McCandless. McCandless took risks, and for the most part, he was an extremely talented mountaineer.
Surrounded by nature, away from society, the only way to live your life. I don't think I'll ever go back now. The more I stay, the more I need it. The leaves just shining down at me, they talk to me. The trees, my friends. The animals, my companions. I just don't understand. Why doesn't everyone want to live like this? Without the problems, without the worries. I just don't understand.
young men and women seeking adventure idolized McCandless to an almost godlike extent, because what he represents to them, and which I think is so relatable to young people these days, is a lack of self. His ventures into the wilderness and his distancing himself from the kind of monotony of modern life was based out of insecurities in the worth of himself. And that's why you see young people these days climbing mountains, parasailing, windsurfing, wakeboarding. Because that need for thrill and adventure and that Neolithic excitement, it lies deep within us all and defining us as human beings, animals, not just...
The trees tower above us, judging us all.
For a young man in Spartan culture to become a Spartan warrior, a true man, he is sent out into nature with nothing but his own devices, and he is quested with the task of taking down a beast and bringing it home for his family. In the terms of McCandless, who was searching for this grip on the natural world and that sort of vigor that the Spartans had, the beast he was wrestling was his identity. It's a ton of bullshit.
Dun dun dun.
As we see in the original Lion King, Simba, faced with the prospect of taking over the throne, reacts in a way similar to the shakiness McCandless had, but shrouded in a very much different manner. Obviously, it's a Disney movie. In the excitement of this prospect, Simba journeys to find himself, placing himself in dangerous situations, testing himself in the situations a king might be tested in. Luckily, he has guardians nearby. The elders of the tribe are there to look out for him, pick him up when he falls. But unfortunately, this is a romanticized version of the tale of placing oneself in dangerous situations and hoping for the best and a search to prove yourself. Alaska is no Disney movie, and there was no one to pick up McCandless when he fell. Right there's good.